From author Brian K. Morris comes a tale of irreverent holiday horror, told with much inappropriate humor. Dr. Victor Frankenstein creates the spirit of giving himself. Ho, ho, ho! Santastein, or the post-holiday Prometheus. Available at Amazon.com. Get your copy today.
Welcome to Clever Title Pending with your host, Brian K. Morris, independent publisher, freelance hybrid author, award-winning playwright, and former mortician's assistant. Don't send him title recommendations because Brian knows exactly what he's doing. So just sit down and look pretty as Brian K. Morris scrolls through your comments and plays with his mouse. Join him on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central, for Evening Pandemonium and Moonlight Madness.
And good evening, everyone. Welcome to Clever Title Pending for December 15th, 2020. We're almost through the month. Oh boy, won't that be great? Anyway, I'm your host, Brian K. Morris. Welcome to tonight's show, and I'm really excited. If you like those two trailers that ran just prior to the show's start, you're going to dig who's on tonight. Jeffrey Hayes is here of Plasmafire Graphics, and he's a fun guy. He's got a lot of things to say, so get your questions ready for him. And if you're watching us on the rerun, we appreciate your patronage greatly. Also, if you're listening to us on iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify, any of the podcast services, we love having you here. Thank you for your time and listening to us. And thank you to everyone who is watching on the Rising Tide Publications page on Facebook and on my personal page. Be sure, if you like this video, to give it a like. All right. And if you're on the Rising Tide page, also please like the page you're watching it on, because it does help us show up in more news feeds. Okay. And if you're watching us on YouTube for that better picture quality and sound, please give a thumbs up to the video if you enjoy it. And also, please consider subscribing to the channel and be sure to tingle that little bell. Everyone wants you to ring it, but I want you to give it a tingle so you'll be notified of any future shows that we do. We want to thank our Patreon subscribers for their ongoing support. And we also want to thank Plasmafire Graphics, when the look of your book matters to you, because it sure as heck matters to your readers. And also thank you to Geek Insider for powering this episode, along with Rising Tide Publications. And now, like I said, we have got a fantastic guest, and I'm looking forward to talking to this man. We've been talking for a few months now online, and pretty much getting along. Anyway, he's very patient with me, and so I'm really excited by the fact that I get to talk to him in person now. So it is my delight and my honor to bring Mr. Jeffrey Hayes. Jeff, how are you tonight, sir?
Good evening, Brian and Clever Morians.
There you go. Very good. You learned the lingo already.
That's right.
And it's a good sign that people are excited, because I see how many comments we have waiting for us. This may be for the first 6-hour episode ever. We've got quite a number of people wanting their say. And as usual, unlike the morning show, we will run most of your comments on the screen, but we're looking forward to your questions for Jeffrey about what it's like to be a graphic designer for books and for trailers, what goes into it. And if you got any interest in getting into the field, this is a golden opportunity to pick this man's brain. And if you're looking to beef up the look of your books again. We got an expert here. So anyway, Jeffrey, as usual, we offer something here. We say that you can have the floor and all the dirt on it. Tell these people who you are and why you are so freaking awesome.
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Hayes. Plasmafire Graphics is the company that I started several years ago to do movie posters, book covers, things like that. You can find me on plasmafiregraphics.com or on Facebook on Plasmafire Graphics, as well as Instagram. Tonight, I want to remind everybody that if you put your questions in the comment section, we're at the end of the broadcast. I'm going to go through and pull all of those questions and take your names, type them in, put them in a drawing for this shadow print right here. And a lot of other little goodies I'll include in the box. But I want to remind everybody, if you haven't done so already, make sure you go to StreamYard. Let them know that they can use your comments so that I'll have your contact information and your name. That's the only way I'm going to be able to make contact with you if you are the winner.
Very, very good. Thank you very much. Yeah, and I've got one of those shadow paintings on my wall. And I think it increases
in your bedroom.
In my bedroom.
And you always say that whenever you mention that.
I do. It's in my bedroom. I don't tell people it's hanging up over the. Never mind. But anyway,
yeah.
No, I will try. People that give us questions, I will try to write them down. So if I seem distracted, it's because I'm trying to be a good host for once. But anyway, like I said, we welcome everyone who is watching us. We had a bunch of comments from YouTube already before the show started. And good evening to Teresa Dunn and Grant Lankard and Sarah, and all kinds of people. Sarah, glad you're here.
That's the pre-show crew right there.
It is
all the names you're going. Yeah,
and I think they showed up before I did, or both of us did. I think so. Anyway, we will. And of course, Sarah's warmed up. We're ready. And thank you very much, Grant. Be sure to like this video. You have saved yourself a beating. But I did see anyway, let's start with your story before we launch into the questions, Jeffrey. I know here comes the brutal interrogation. How did you get into what you do with graphic design, doing book covers, design trailers, like the lovely Santa Stein video that you saw at the top of the show? How did you get into this? What's your background?
Well, first I have to have a disclaimer. I am old, so that story is a long story. I hang around you because I know our age difference, but
yeah, I know. I'm glad I can provide your grandfatherly influence.
But it's my interest in art started way back when, probably about 5th grade, when a friend of mine brought me. I don't know if you remember the Making of Star Trek, that the little paperback but was it Ballantyne, I believe, or who? I don't remember who.
So. It was David Gerald, wasn't it?
Yeah. And so he brought that to school one day, and it's been downhill ever since because I fell in love with Star Trek, which evolved into doing artwork, trying to do my own drawings of the characters. I was, captured by the ships, and I don't know how many times I traced the pictures out of that book. I think I destroyed the book by tracing the pictures so many times, but it turned into even, I guess I was around 12, 13. I would create my own little fan magazine. I started till I got into 6th grade, and I met my oldest friend. He lives in England now, but he's my oldest friend, and both of us had a love for Star Trek, and then he introduced me to comic books. And so we started drawing comic books as part of the little fan magazine we would put together. And then as I got into high school, same group, we had a group of friends. There were 7 of us, all very close. And we started playing Dungeons and Dragons. And yeah, that was a creative outlet. And I ended up being the dungeon master a lot because I loved telling the stories, getting people involved, in the stories. And so, matter of fact, I probably was a player character a third, a quarter of the time, and a dungeon master most of the time. But that became, I started drawing. I started drawing characters. I started drawing, I love doing maps, big maps, campaign maps, love doing that. And then because I live in Austin, there was a gaming company called Metagaming. And it was, they made the Fantasy Trip was their kind of role-playing system, but they created tabletop tactical Melee and Wizard were kind of the two starters. And then it evolved into a role-playing system. And I don't even know how this got into my head. When I found out where they were located, and I went to the building, walked up to the front door, and walked into the little reception area and asked for the owner. And I said, "Is the owner here?" And they introduced me, and it was a real nice man named Roger. And I told him what I liked doing. I like drawing and things like that. He says, "Well, bring me some of your pictures," and I did, and he let me start helping put a magazine together. They're kind of they had just, as a matter of fact, they just went through a major split. Steve Jackson Games. I don't know if you're familiar with Steve Jackson Games. So GURPS. GURPS, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And so Steve Jackson was a part of Metagaming for a time. He was the creative impetus for many things. And so like those small business situations seem to do, that creative, because everybody involved in that game creation, they're all creatives, they're artists, they're storytellers, there's that natural competition, and then you throw money on top of it. And because of that, they split, and they split like weeks before I walk in the door going, "Hi, I'd like to help out." And so he let me come in. I helped put to Interplay was the name of the little magazine, little half letter size magazine. And I used to do pen and ink drawings, and basically they were called, the nickname for them was dollar per square inch. And in your mind, you think, "Oh, okay, $1 per square inch. Let's do bigger drawings." Now, you could do a drawing the size of a house, and what it was is what it got printed in. So, we're talking 2 inches, 4 inches. I think the most I ever made was like $5 on a drawing. But yeah, and back then I thought it was pretty awesome. But I did that for some time. But the owner, I think he was more interested in the game creation, and he was interested in computers. Now, this is back in 1980, and this man was a very brilliant guy. He was he would translate and decode messages from. I'm probably going to get killed now that I'm telling you this. During the Cold War, he was based up in Alaska, and so very brilliant guy. And so he was the one that developed the technical aspects of the games, and I think he enjoyed that. But right in 1980, 81, right in that time, computers were beginning to emerge, and I think he was more interested in that. And so he shut down the business. And of course, so what do? I go running up to Steve Jackson Games and knock on the door, and I say, "Hey, I just left Metagaming. Any chances you need an artist?" And they let me do counters and little gaming maps and things like that. And I did that for a few years and was paid the same $1 per square inch. Mm-hmm. But see, I told you it's a long story, so you're not going to get to talk.
Go for it, man. We got 2 hours. Go for it.
Let's see if I can fill it with my life story.
Here you go. But, we'll read one question. They'll automatically be the winner.
That's right. And the winner is no. Yeah. So I ended up just to have a job. I was working time for a grocery company, a Texas-based grocery company. And that turned into a full-time job very quickly. And I ended up, after the Steve Jackson games didn't pan out thoroughly. And honestly, it's because they had a group, a bullpen of artists that were fantastic. And I still look at their art today and just wish I could have started off doing that like they do. But I ended up working for this grocery company for a while, and because I was interested in video production, and because I'd taken a few classes in video production at my local community college, and because I was interested in art, the unit director, or I guess we had some of the biggest stores in Texas at the time. The superstores, as you would call them today. They didn't really exist back in this day, but we had one. Right. And he saw what I could do. He put me in touch with corporate, and I began doing. They took me out of the service end of it, and all I did for the next 8 years was commercial art, commercial illustration. And did it for advertisements, did it in-store displays. I'd go to different stores. I'd work out of one major kind of hub and did things. And I did that for 8 years. And the great thing about it was I went from getting, and I know this is you have to put it in the era. Right. I was getting paid $3.75 an hour, Yeah. That's good money. And when they did that, they put me at the top of that pay grade, and it went to $10.75. And back in that era, that was a lot of money. I was able to get a car, an apartment, all these things no 20-year-old should have, because it was like, it was just too much freedom. But no, I did that for many, many years. And I did some filmmaking, a little bit of, I would call it extremely amateurish filmmaking. I still was very interested in that. Did a film, a 30-minute film that will never be seen if I have any say in it. And it was called The Vindicator, very similar to The Punisher, but an original IP, I assure you. I ended up meeting many, many, many law enforcement officers in the Austin area, because much of what I had to film when trying to create this 30-minute production involved law enforcement, either being in the film, if you will, or me going and filming the cars with the lights and things that I couldn't arrange myself or do myself. Right. And I started riding out with the local law enforcement, and something just clicked in my head, and I started riding out pretty much every single weekend with different police officers, Fridays and Saturdays. And I had the freedom to do that because of the art job that I was doing. I was off weekends. And then some weird thing hit me. And one night, a friend of mine, his name was Jim Wilburn, he came up to me and he says, "Hey, I'm moving to Los Angeles." Because he was interested in filmmaking. We did a lot of this work together. He says, "I'm moving to Los Angeles." And I said, "Wow, okay, Jim." And he says, "I want you to come with me, and we're going to move out there. I already have a friend who's got an apartment. We're going to, we can just immediately move out there. It's kind of like that. Hey, we're just going to go to Hollywood." And that's really was his idea. And I actually ended up telling my family, I said, "Hey, I'm just letting y'all know I'm moving to Hollywood." And just like it sounds. And something was in the back of my head, about law enforcement. And I don't know why, it just was stuck with me. And it was interesting. And the things that I'd seen, the things I was able to do just when riding with law enforcement, it was like, and I'm not exaggerating when I say the night before we were scheduled to leave, I picked up the phone and I said, "Hey, Jim, I'm not moving. I'm actually going to go to the police academy. I want to get in law enforcement. And that's exactly what happened. And so I did 30 years in law enforcement, and started off as a reserve officer for a while, until I got a good full-time job. And I started at a hospital police department, which was a kind of a part of the Austin Police Department. They had a city hospital.
Okay.
Worked there for 4 years. Honestly, you didn't go look for your calls. The calls came to you, lights and siren, up on an ambulance dock.
Wow.
And that was probably of my career, the most interesting 4 years, because so much bizarre stuff happened. And I could tell you hours of stories just for those 4 years. But that I ended up coming out to a city right on the edge of Austin. And it was at the moment they were expanding. And I walked in the door at the right moment and stayed there for 18 years. We went from being 12 officers to 78 officers. I moved up to captain fairly quickly. Never ever imagined I'd want to be an administrator by any stretch of the imagination. Matter of fact, if you had asked me, I say, "Oh my God, no! Who would want to do that? Don't you want to be a chief someday? Oh God, no! Who would want to be a chief? Oh my God, look at them! They're idiots. The stars way down on the blood going to their heads. They don't think they're, And I had no desire. And then it's weird. Out of necessity, I felt I had to promote. Again, it was more about saying, if I don't promote and do this, no one's going to do it, or they're not going to do it the way I want to do it. Mm-hmm. And I was very, how do you say this without tag words? I was probably an atypical police officer. I was fairly progressive in my thinking. And so when you come to a small department like that, progressive thinking is often on the margin. And so spent the time there growing with the department, and I ended up getting a chief that was superb, very ethical man, won a national award for the ethics that he brought to law enforcement. And again, I don't know why. I must have been insane, but I had a neighboring city contact me. A friend of mine, I'd known him since, we were the only two officers on the street. He was the only officer on the street in his city. I was the only officer on the street in mine. That's how small both of our towns were. So we'd end up backing each other up. And so 18 years later, he becomes chief of police for this agency. And he got to choose his assistant. And so he called me and literally sat down at lunch and said, "Hey, would you be the assistant chief?" It was like a marriage proposal. Right. "Would you be my assistant chief?"
Yeah.
And
me and like offer you.
Yeah, absolutely. He offered
cool.
the badge.
Yeah, I can see it.
He held the badge up. No,
yeah.
But it made me just. I remember, this is what I remember. There was a tile floor, and I remember looking at the tile floor, and measuring that tile in my brain, because it was like unbelievable. And I said, you know what? Where else am I going to get the chance to help an agency develop in the way that I've always believed in agencies should develop? So, and I knew what kind of guy he was. A very, very ethical, strong, ethical man. And so I took the chance and did 7 more years, and that was my 30 years. And it was, it was time. And that was now coming up almost on a year and a half, 2 years ago that I retired.
Oh man, that's great. That's great.
So how did you? Story.
Yeah, it was, but it was great though. And I support the Blue Line too. And I know what it's like, how excited you can get when you go on the ride-alongs.
Absolutely.
Because you get, at one point, you can see parts of humanity that'll make you weep. But then you'll also see a group of caring people being, trying to be as wise as they can with people who are probably having the worst day of their lives. And they're expecting you to fix it.
Absolutely.
So I totally get that. I totally get that.
On the best day, you're able to help somebody.
Right.
In their worst day.
Mm-hmm.
And even writing, I there's so many situations that we got into, but one that changed my life, because it made me realize somebody has to stand in the gap for people. Right. And the very best police officers endeavor to do that. They intercede, they stand in the gap, and they put, there's some sound cliche, especially in this day and age, when we have so many situations where police officers have become their own worst enemy. And we've had, I said this to a friend of mine, you hear people say, well, see, he's not a bad guy. I told you, police officers aren't all bad. Yeah. Well, I when I hear that, I go, no, police officers aren't all good, but the vast majority are, but not all of them. And I've seen them, and I've dealt with them. But we went to a call, and it's something like right out of a movie or something. But we were driving down the street looking for the house in a very poor neighborhood, and I think he was about 4 or 5 years old, but a little boy comes running out into the middle of the road, and he just has his underwears on. It's in the middle of the night, and he's waving us down. And I said, the Earl was the name of the officer I was riding with. And I said, Earl, I think that may be our call right there. And sure enough, it was. And we get out of the car, and immediately you hear screaming, and you hear all of the tussle that comes with a family disturbance. Right. And we could see through the windows, because the windows were open. It was summertime. Windows were open. And it's just as you imagine. This man is like physically beating his wife. And it was like nothing. We both ran in. We both took hold of this guy. But it wasn't like a movie at this point. Right. Because it was just, it was survival at that point, because it was like both of us ended up bruised and bloody that night. But we finally got hold of him. And all I remember as we were leaving, or as we were finishing the call, is the mom and the little boy. And as we walk out the door, now, I'm just a civilian, so she doesn't see me as a police officer, but she is thanking Earl. And she's just weeping. And I was going like, yeah, comic books. This is real life. So that's what set me on that path. But never stop doing art. So now we'll bring it back around. But I did art all the time. I did art, and I drew outlines of dead bodies. No,
that's anatomy. That's where you got good at anatomy. Yeah.
Well, they thought I'd be good at it. They said, "You're an artist, right?" And no.
I would talk. Yeah.
That's right. My drawings, I told this to the guys at Stupid O'Clock. I said mine though were a little bit more elaborate and had a lot of full color. And I don't think that just works out in the police photographs. But no, I just kept doing it. And then about, this would have been 2008, I just happened upon a Star Trek fan production out of California. And it was so cool to see fans do something I didn't even know was possible. I'd heard of Star Wars fan films and things like that. It was right on the edge of that becoming popular. But I started doing artwork for them, production artwork, promotional artwork, and helped them a little bit. And then that led to another fan group based out of upstate New York, which was called Star Trek New Voyages. Oh, yeah. And that was more my speed, because it was original series folks. And I'm a OG Star Trek guy. I love the original series. Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it actually helped develop me as a person, to be honest with you, when I was so young, because I was so amazed at the way it worked, the people working together for a common goal, all of that. And so I got involved. I was invited to be the set photographer up there for some of the production shoots. I got involved at the time. They had Walter Koenig, David Jarrell, Denise Crosby, people like that coming up there. I got to, of course, I started doing a little fanzine again, and got to interview folks like doing that. I got to design one of the ships. So it's all coming full circle. Stuff that I got in trouble for in 5th grade in math class, I was able to do now, But yeah, I did that, started doing posters. Those posters led to movie posters, people I had met, got, one person to another. And then book covers, then audio drama covers, and that exploded. And that's what I've been doing since 2008. So there's my story, and I'm going to stick to most of it.
I believe you should, because that's a great story. It really is. And we actually have a record tonight. We actually have someone who asked a question before the show started.
No way, really?
Yeah, way. Here he is. Trevor Hawkins. Trevor Hawkins is our first contestant. I've written it down. Question for Jeff. When you are trying to figure out what characters will look like in your art, do you work on your own perception of the author's written words, or do you dialogue with the author directly?
Most often it's both. And the best covers, it's both. What I try to do as often as possible is read the author's work, their material. As you can imagine, you don't always have the time to do that. But most often you can get a good description in there, what they wear, what they use, props. I kind of use movie terms, but their costuming, their props, what they look like, beard, eye color, things like that. And if it's not something that I can quickly find, then I begin the dialogue with the author. When I was doing like the covers to the audio dramas, it was an interesting kind of gig, Colonial Radio Theater on the air out of Boston. So they wanted their actors, the voice actors, to be represented on the covers, because they were usually a lot of community theater actors or local actors. And so they wanted to give them some exposure. Now, sometimes, what's the old, I'm going to mess this up, but it's he has a face for radio.
Oh yeah.
Well, there were oftentimes that there was a voice actor that didn't really match up. And so, I had to do some creative artwork there. But to answer the question, it's both. But I love talking to the author. But one warning that I always give authors: I will never reproduce what you see in your head, because authors are creating the look, and then they settle in somewhat on a look in their head, and I'll never be able to recreate it. At my best, I'll come close to it. So talking with the author, but explaining that, reading what they've written, and then giving them some options, a few options here or there, not tons, but a few. We usually come to a pretty quick agreement. Mm-hmm. So both, and it's in different measures with different authors, right, or different editors at a publishers.
Right. Well, I will say from the authorial side of it that Trevor Hawkins and I have worked together on 3 or 4 covers, and generally I'll give him an idea of what I would like to see, and then he gives me something back that is totally different and 1,000 times better. So folks, listen to your artist. Seriously, listen to your artist, because they're trained in the visual stuff. We aren't. So
well, and a good example of that is a recent the covers I did for Jim Beard's Sergeant Janus series. Yeah, I love it. So that is one where I read both books in depth, because not only do I like Jim a lot, he's a great writer, but the subjects was superb, and there were some stories in there that I absolutely just blew my mind. And I said, "This is beautiful." So whenever an artist can like sink their teeth and their claws into that, you're going to get a better product in the end. And so we sat down, and he knew what he wanted on the cover, but he gave me some just loose guidelines on the look. And so what we came up with, he said, that's Sergeant Janus, and that makes you happy. You get excited when the author says that.
Right.
But even Bobby Nash, I love Abraham Snow. I love the Snow series. I am a giggly, goofy fan when it comes to the Snow series. Yeah. And about I guess this would have been a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, I just contacted him and said, "Hey, can I do some artwork? Do you care if I do some Snow made up fantasy, kind of almost fan artwork?"
Right.
And he says, "Sure." And I said, "Can you tell me what you picture when you see him in your mind?" And he gave me some actors and some general guidelines. And then we narrowed it down, settled in on an image. And that is Snow in my head. And I hope it's Snow in his head, because he's going to look that way every time I do him now. I'm going to work very hard at doing that.
Yeah. Well, and it's amazing how an artist can fix an image in the reader's head. Growing up in the 60s and getting those great Bantam books with the Doc Savage, covers,
absolutely.
Those great James Bama covers.
James Bama, one of my favorites.
Oh my God, he's so amazing. And but the thing is, when I look at the original pulps, he was, Doc Savage was drawn to look like kind of like a clean-shaven Clark Gable. Mm-hmm. Whereas it was Steve Holland in the James Bama stuff, but it's still that like rich golden character with the widow's peak, mm-hmm. and the torn shirt and everything that looks like the 50s Flash Gordon. Of course, that's who is in my mind.
Absolutely.
When I read that.
And I think in most people's minds, because it had such a impact. As a matter of fact, I used to. So what got me interested in book covers was there was a place here in Austin that I believe started in Austin, Texas, called Half Price Books. It's now kind of it's a national chain now, but back in the 70s, there were two, and there was one downtown and one up north where I lived. And it was truly Half Price Books. It's where you could go in, and a 10-cent comic was 5 cents. Right. A dollar paperback was 50 cents or less. But what was so awesome about this place was it had a wall of where they had screwed in paperback book racks. Yeah. And so it was literally, the wall was full, and I would stand there as a kid and I'd just stare at them. And that's where I saw some of the shadow paperbacks, a handful that there were, but Doc Savage, men's magazines, by Minnie and Bruce Minnie and people like that. You find all that stuff in that place. Yeah. And they got to know me well enough. I would spend hours in there, and maybe I'd leave. Well, I always left, I think, with something, but it may be just one or two comics or a book or something. But yeah, that era, that late 60s, early 70s paperback, 60s, 70s paperback era, man, I still love it. And I wish I could emulate Executioner,
The Destroyer.
Destroyer, thank you.
Yes.
I'm terrible with names, by the way. I'll confess that. Yeah, I love those. Oh man, do I love those covers.
Oh my God, those were so good. I want to say George Wilson did those, but I could be wrong.
I don't know. I used to when I was younger, but
Phantom stuff at the time.
I'm trying to think of the other one that had. Pretty much, I got to where I could look at a cover and identify a Obama cover pretty quick, even as non-Doc Savage stuff. Yeah. And I would go, "Oh, I love that. I wonder if that's Obama." And sometimes it would say on the inside, sometimes it wouldn't. Right. But no, that he probably is the spark in my artistic life than comic books. We'll get into that later.
I'm sure we will. I hope we will. Otherwise, we'll have to have you back. You have time to make up your mind whether that's viable. But anyway, Trevor Hawkins follows up his first question with, have you ever influenced an author's story by your visual understanding of things? And Trevor knows what it's like to work with cranky authors. So,
thanks for the warning. No, you know, I'm trying to think if I have. I would say this. I kind of put Bobby Nash in a bind when I finished the first. I call it poster. Right. I had created this kind of fun poster. I don't know. It's just kind of how I imagine snow. And then I put these little scenes around it.
Yeah.
And as soon as I gave it to him and said, "Hey, here it is," he goes, "Oh, now I'm going to have to write stories that match those pictures," you know? Right. And so that was great because I was waiting like, okay, when is that story coming out? But we've been talking behind the scenes. There's some fun stuff coming out next year, and I'm so happy to be involved.
Oh, I hear you. And hopefully we will get the chance to, you know, because Bobby's mentioned it on the show. By the way, I told him I'd say this, www.bobbynash.com. You know, he was wondering if we would bring it up, and I said, "Well, if we don't, you better show up and do it." And Teresa Dunn has said, "Kinky is the bomb." Okay, there's been a whole line of conversation.
Always is.
And that grateful later on. Trevor Hawkins also says, "Jeff, do you follow color palette trends in your designs?" I will say that Trevor does. He is very knowledgeable about color and what appeals to that particular genre. And I've only made him go against it one time for Volcana because I just wanted this image of fire. And
absolutely.
So, but do you follow color palette trends, which can change?
No, they do. And so one of the things I love very much, and unfortunately does influence me. And I say unfortunately because I can get locked in on a color trend, and that's dangerous. If you recall, I would say this started maybe about 5 years ago now, but I call it the orange blue trend in movie posters.
Right.
There were some that were beautiful, and because they were beautifully done, I tried to work that into some of the projects I did. What I found that I would do is that became a crutch, and I didn't. So I try not to, but I do, because I'll see something like most recently. I love Godzilla, and I love Godzilla King of the Monsters and things like that. And those posters, the kind of the monotone, the way they treated them, I love that. And so I kind of snuck that into a few projects, that style. But I will tell you this, I am a child of the 70s. And a lot of what you're going to see in most of my work are vibrant colors. I love, some would call them like fluorescent. I lean toward fluorescent. I love, I used to get Heavy Metal magazine and the way, a lot of that artwork of that era. So that's what really comes out of me a lot, a very vibrant color scheme. I have to pull that back, especially when you're dealing with a noir or pulp, because that's just isn't always the style they want to see.
Yeah, but for instance, the shadow print that you showed earlier that you'll be giving away. I like the juxtaposition of the cool background, but suddenly, it's almost like the shadow himself is radiating this energy that makes it pop.
Yeah, I like this. I've always gravitated to that black and white with a strong accent color, that can blue and red. Matter of fact, you're talking about getting a color palette that got me in trouble. I did some film posters for a producer in the UK. And again, that was one of those, one job led to another job, led to these jobs. The first one I did for him was for a noir series called Jack Says. It was a book, a comic book, and then it became a movie. And then Jack Falls, and there was another, and forgive me, I always forget it. But so he loved the black and white and red. I did the poster in only black, white, and red. So he said, great, that's beautiful. That's the color palette of the comic. That's what we want to go with. Okay, so the second project. Yeah, Jack, it's part of the Jack series, black, white, red, black, white, red. Excellent. So then we move on to another story called Cut. And he goes, I like what you did on the Jack series, so I want you to stick with black, white, red. I said, okay. So I did that one. And then the next project was called The Last Seven. And he goes, I want you to do black, white, and red. And so I did. So that was getting me in trouble. And so when I show it in my portfolio, people go like, wow, you don't you're just black and white and red. That's great. Okay, thank you. Next. So it was great work, and it paid really, really well. I will probably not see a paycheck like those paid, but it was nice. It was nice.
That's cool. That is very cool. And speaking of cool, Sarah says, well, hello,
Sarah.
Jeffrey Hayes.
Hello, Sarah.
Great to put a face to great books and trailers. Wow.
Thank you. You're always very supportive, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
We love you. We love you, Sarah. We really do. And Cindy Kep, our chief inquisitor.
The Grand Inquisitor.
That's right.
Wielder of puns.
That's right. Brace yourself.
I'll behave.
All right.
Hang on.
Behave. Cindy Kep would like to know, what characteristics make a good book trailer?
Oh,
Good
man.
question. That's a very good
So
question.
it's a great question. So I'm lucky that I didn't get to see a heck of a lot of book promos. My promo work comes from working in my church. It was very cut. I guess you would call it, today it's kind of common, but at the time we would have a lot of video promotions and things like that. So picking out the key, what is the author trying to say? We'll bring it back into books. What is the author trying to get across? Sometimes when you get the opportunity to do the cover, you already are armed with all of that information. What are they trying to get? What's the feel? What's the flavor? Who is this going to appeal to? What is the audience? It's the same thing when you construct a cover as when you construct a promo. Depending on the length of the promo, you have room to play, or sometimes you don't. I would say that what catches their interest, what's the audience, and so knowing the audience, what's going to catch their interest, and what is going to not. It's called. Have you heard the term hiding the dagger?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I use that kind of in this way. I never want to give away anything that the author intended to have hidden, but I love dancing around it. So if I can find a unique and fun way to dance around the dagger and let that audience member, that viewer, that reader know, oh, there's a chance that there's a big bug-eyed monster in this story, maybe through a silhouette, maybe through a noise, something like that. Everything that goes to making a good cover goes to making a good promo. And then if the author, you can talk about the author and their other works. Sometimes people go like, oh, he wrote a bunch of great science fiction, but this is a fantasy. Well, I like those. I'll probably like this. And so you try to work that in somehow.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Very cool. Yes, Michaela, prizes. And Cindy Cap would like to know, what is the biggest gaffe you see in book trailers? Now, whether it's somebody else's, or do you sometimes get asked to put in things into your trailers that you're like, no, this won't work properly, but the client insists?
I haven't had that happen yet, because usually if I work with the author and we talk and we communicate and we kind of are in sync, you can always find a creative way to add something that they feel is very important that you may not feel necessarily works. But if you can make it work, then you're both happy. So I confess, in the limited numbers that I have done, very limited numbers, I've so far made everybody happy. But the biggest gaffe, I have learned it and I've corrected it, is no narration. I will always have narration. As a matter of fact, you will. I don't, even in my promo that you showed at the top of the show, right. It has no narration in it. Well, that was made before I learned my lesson. So I really realize now that I need to go back, redo that, have my Thomas, my friend in Norway. If everybody's wondering, this gentleman lives in Norway. Thomas is unbelievably talented. And so I will use him when I can. But I need to go back and redo mine because it needs that voice. But that's the biggest gaffe. I think you have to have narration. Someone talking, someone speaking. More so because where it is being used, you can't count on it not being replayed as a podcast or like iHeartRadio or something like that. Right. And I would say there's a lot of promos out there that need that. And you know what? It was one of Cindy's promos, I believe, that you talked about that made me go. And it was the one you played of hers. And I think it was the first time you played it. Right. And you said something about needing that narrative. I went, oh my gosh, yes. And I'll never go back. It will always have narration.
Well, when you get that revamped Plasmafire Graphics, plasmafiregraphics.com promo done, make sure I get a copy. I want to run it. And Sarah, I think we've answered the question. That is not Jeffrey's voice. It is his friend from Denmark. And what gets me about him is, aside from the fact that I would listen to this guy read a laundry list, it's really hard to hear any sort of Northern European
not a bit
accent. Yeah.
On occasion, I've had to go back how he pronounces. Here's a recent example. He always gives me many versions of a narration, and I love that. And I'm probably spoiled because not all folks do that for you. But he gives me maybe 4 different versions. And I recently did the promo for Charles Millhouse's Hawkland promo. And so the way that he pronounced it it sounded more like, and I'm going to overemphasize, but Hawkling. And so it sounded like ing, but it was just his accent. And so I had to record my terrible Texas accent on a little recording and say, everything was beautiful, except it sounds like this. Right. And I just said it 4 times. I went, Hawkland, Hawkland. And he sent it back to me in like maybe less than 15 minutes. And it was perfect.
Wow.
Yeah, the guy is, someday I'm probably going to lose him because he's so professional. He's great to work with too. Very fast.
That is fantastic. That is really fantastic. And we also have a gentleman just showed up that we both know, Mr. John C. Bruning. My friend.
Security is terrible in this joint.
Report to HR, Mr. Bruning. Report to HR. We're glad to see you, John. Hope you're having a great night, my friend. And Cindy Kemp would also like to know, what are the biggest differences between a book trailer and a promo?
So I call them the same things. Here's how I differentiate them. So you have a motion graphic, which isn't likely to have narration because it's going to be shorter. It may be a still image that's manipulated digitally. There's so many ways to do it now, so many programs now that allow you to do that. That I would call a motion graphic. It's usually less than 15 seconds long. once you hit 30 seconds and I would say no more than a minute, because you're going to start losing people. That's going to be a trailer. That's going to be a promo. And I use those words interchangeably. In the profession, there may be a specific word, but those are the words I use. Book promo or book trailer. I would also say that a trailer is going to be much more theatric. It's going to be have a lot more sound effects and drama and music and things like that. So that pushes into the trailer aspect of it. The promo probably leans more to information, if you had to differentiate the two.
That makes sense. Now, Joe Dog McKeel of Stupid O'Clock and
how these people keep getting in.
They heard you were here, man. They heard you were here. You're drawing them like iron filings to a lodestone. You're bringing all the disreputable people. But anyway, yes. Those are my people. But anyway, Joe Dog McKeel, Stupid O'Clock, Thursdays at 9 Eastern and 11 on Saturday nights. Check out that show. There was a recent episode with Jeffrey, and he was amazing.
They are a great group of people. They make you feel very welcome. Very welcome.
They're incredible. They really are. Anyway, he has a question for you, Jeff. Any projects coming up that are unusual or exciting that you can talk about?
Can. Well, so you didn't tell me I couldn't talk about the thing we're working on.
I didn't. Go for it. Go for it.
So I am working with Joe Dog on a Halicon poster. Sweet. I won't get into the details because he probably wants to do a reveal, but I'm going to do the poster for next year. It has a new theme, fun theme, and I'm going to enjoy doing this. Of course, I have one job that must get done before I can even start working on other jobs. But no, I'll be working with Joe. It should be out. I hope the artwork is done so he can premiere it at the end of January.
That's fantastic.
But it's for Halicon, so I can't wait. I'm actually excited.
That'll be great. And of course, we are talking, you and I, about doing a couple of book projects together.
Yes, absolutely.
So Doc Saga.
Absolutely.
If I ever get off my butt and finish editing that thing. But that's on me, folks. It has nothing. Jeffrey is being wonderful about it. And plus another thing that if you were on Patreon, you'd be reading the newest chapter today. But anyway, Ted Davies Artistry, glad to have you here, Ted. Jeff, good to meet you. How do you get inspired when you have a new client and you are not excited about their work?
That's not fair. So recently, now that I've begun freelancing, I can't say that I can pick and choose my clients, but most of the clients that I've worked with since I became a freelance artist, and I'll explain what that means in a sec, or to me, what it means to me, is I've been able to work and referred by word of mouth. And so the group of people that I've been involved with are usually authors that are doing something that I am excited about. Now I'll answer your question. So I used to work exclusively for two organizations, Prose Press and Colonial Radio Theater on the Air. Now I worked for those folks simultaneously. And so when you work for a publisher, you're often going to be given projects that you're not necessarily excited about. And there were many times that I would take on too many projects, and getting the project done was what was important. And I was less enthusiastic about the projects that I had to do. And that was all my fault. That's nothing that came, it was nothing on behalf of the author or the publisher. It was me taking on too much because, you want to be overloaded with projects because you love doing them, but it's dumb to do it that way. How do I get excited about one that I'm not excited about? I try to understand the story. I find something interesting in the story. I think something, and I know that Ted has this as well, because I know he loves talking to people. He has his shows, and because he finds people interesting, or he can find something interesting about that person or their project, he can do a show about it. Same mentality, Ted. It's the same thing you use when you put a show together. I look at a project that I look at it and I go like, how could, there was a project once, a kid, all he wanted, a kid, they're all kids to me, is he needed a man in a robe, and there was a hangman's noose involved in this, and the character is kind of, you can kind of figure it out. The character was hung, but he didn't die, and he comes back for vengeance. Kind of, that's a loose version of it. So I'm going like, man, that's boring. How do I make that interesting? Or what I was told, how do I make that little phrase that I was given interesting? And so I started reading more about the author. I go to his website, I go to his Facebook, I started looking into his other work, and I started trying to understand what he got excited about. And when I did that piece, it's one of the few pieces that as I was working for the publisher, that the author contacts me through email and says, "Oh, you nailed it." You know, and I'm like, "Oh, okay." I meant to. No, it just shocked me because I remember when I looked at that, I could not figure out, and it happens, and he knows, and Ted knows that it happens. I will be honest, and if I pray he's not watching or not part of our group here, but Tommy Hancock, who is the editor-in-chief at Prose A, gave me an extraordinary opportunity to work on 3 Lazarus Gray covers. Now, I love Barry Reese and I love Lazarus Gray.
Terrific.
Now, when I say I love them, I love these stories and I love this character. And I did cover 1, which I wish I could reveal, but I can't. You know, cover 1 was done, sent and accepted. Moving on to cover 2. Finished cover 2, sent, accepted, and I'm still stuck on 3. I even Tommy and I had these long texts, or excuse me, messages back and forth, and I said, I'm stuck, and I don't want to be stuck. You know, I want to be able to do my job for you. And he couldn't understand why I was stuck, and I said, I know, I love this character, but I'm stuck. I just can't. Well, he throws an idea out, and I went, that's it. Okay, I'm done. I don't talk to you anymore. Now do art. And sometimes it just takes that one little thing or someone else's idea that will get me excited. Now, whether I do what he had in his head, don't know. But I know what's in my head right now.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Very cool. And, well, you know, you mentioned the networking aspect of getting work through the recommendation of other people in the field. You know, that's how you and I met, because
That's right.
Charles F. Millhouse recommended you to me. So,
Lord
love you, Charles. Lord love you. And Teresa Dunn says, I would like to do business with you. I like what you have done for Brian. See? Networking.
Thanks. You know, Teresa and I talked a little bit. She was still working, I think, on she had just finished her most recent poetry book, and we talked a little bit by email. But yeah, absolutely. And I want to say this is a good opportunity. One of the things that is difficult is there are authors that you want to work with, and you know, like, oh, that person would be fun to work with. That person would be fun to work with. Sometimes those opportunities pan out, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes I'm afraid people don't. I call it inviting me, and that's kind of a dumb thing to say, but that's the word I'm going to use. But people will contact me and they'll say, "Hey, Jeff, I'd be interested in doing this." And then I say, "Okay, there's going to be some money involved. I can't. I have so many contracts and so many things going. I don't do things very often for free. Now I do things for free, but I don't. I try to." I feel like, you know, the authors, you want to have people buy your books, and it's not because you're there to become rich. but you want them to buy your books because it signals success in a particular cover, book, or it just is it's how we conduct our business. Well, artists are the same way. There are many jobs I do for free. There are many jobs I do at a highly discounted rate, and I don't want to give everyone the illusion that I'm going to do something free for you. But I always will work with authors. I love indie authors. And I love indie authors because some of the most unique and fun characters, stories, and worlds are built by indie authors, and I get excited about their work. So I'm happy to work with them. So same thing, I don't want people to be scared to ask, to talk, and to dialogue about it. Because I think there's always some way we can find out how to get a project done, a cover done. And I try to give them a lot of bang for their buck, more so than you're going to find in many cases from other online. I got the name of the website jumped out of my head, but it's Yes, Fiverr. Thank you. So Fiverr is an example. You can go on there and you can pay $150 for a package that I'm likely to charge far less for and give you more. And I think I've talked to you about this once, or in passing. I said, if I do your cover, I'll do a promo for you for just a few dollars more. And so that's the kind of thing I want to give indie authors packages that help them be successful in their endeavors. That's my goal, at least.
That's very good. And we're all about the packages here. And Kelly.
Oh my God. If Christian, oh my God. I got to watch my language. I forgot about that. Okay. Hey, Kelly.
Yeah, Kelly. We all know Kelly.
Hey, Kelly.
And she's going to try it again. Hello, everyone. Salutations to you, Brian and Jeffrey. Glad to have you here, Kelly. And a question, yes, you may ask, what is your process when starting a new project? Can you pull someone else's brief description and make your job go smoothly? Or can just pull an idea from your hat and know exactly what and how a new project should go? What is your process, good sir?
So let's see. I just I'm dialoguing right now with the author, friend of a friend of a friend kind of situation. I wanted to know a little bit about the story. I need to understand the genre. I need to understand the protagonist. What do they want on their cover? What do they see in their mind on their cover? A lot of dialoguing that has to take place right at the beginning. Sometimes annoyingly, because like this author that I dealt with over the past 3-4 days, she was happy to say, here's my title, female protagonist standing in front of this kind of building. And I was like, well, okay, I can do that. But is it going to be what you want? Or are you going to come, am I going to give you just what was in my brain from what you said? So I love talking with the author. Sometimes they don't, like when you work for a publisher. And by the way, I love my time with Prose Press. I do not, I'm freelance. I do not work exclusively for Prose Press. I do jobs for them, but I would deal through one person. And so I got to know very little about the stories. But I love learning about the story, about the genre, about the protagonist, about the villain. Sometimes the villain can be 1,000 times more interesting than the protagonist to the artist, right. Because they're like, oh, I love doing villains. I love doing monsters. I love doing things that allow me to go a little crazy. But a lot of talking, and then I do some sketching to give them an idea of what I'm thinking. And then we have that conversation. What do they look like? What do they care? What props do they use? Things like that. And then we start moving toward a final product.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. And talk about security, letting all kinds of people in. Bobby Nash, howdy.
Oh man, you said his name 3 times. We did. We said his name three
Says name
times.
3 times, just like Beetlejuice, you know.
Man,
BobbyNash.com or AbrahamSnow.com. Remember, no matter what the temperature, it's always the summer of snow.
that's right. Hashtag summer snow.
Hashtag summer of snow. And Cindy has a great question here. Where do you get the?
Of course she does.
Of course,
She's the she's the Grand Inquisitor.
She is, and that's for a very good reason. She wants to know, where do you get the tunes for your trailers?
So I'm a member of a couple of different websites, Adobe Stock, things like that. I told you I'm terrible with names. It'll hit me in a second. Envato.
Oh, Envato. Right.
So and I use YouTube Studio, and I've used YouTube Studio more so lately, and you and I both know why.
Right.
So Envato is a stock site where you can buy music, video, templates, things like that, which I use to produce all of these little things that I've done, and I like using them because they have artists that really can produce some very cinematic music for these productions, these short little productions. Here, you and I both know the problem with that is these artists try to protect themselves.
I'm going to interrupt you real fast. I'm getting the zapping sound.
All right. How about now?
Still got it. We had this problem before the show, so.
Yeah. Hang on. Take it off. Still the same?
Yeah.
Still the same?
Try backing out of here and then coming back in.
Okay, let me see.
Yeah, still, a little worse actually.
No. All right, stand by one.
There we go. While he's doing that, folks, and thank you for your patience here. One thing I will touch on about music in using music in trailers is right now that's very important. It's kind of a hot topic among creators in that. And here he is. Let's hear you.
Hopefully it's working better.
Beautiful.
Okay.
I was just vamping and explaining that using music is very important because there are people that will put copyright strikes on your work if you put them like on Facebook or YouTube. And I gotta say, Jeffrey and I had a problem with somebody that was doing it, and Jeffrey straightened it out very wonderfully, I will say. Yeah,
the artists or the musicians are hiring these companies to protect their property, which I get that. The problem is many times that these organizations, I would say the legitimate organizations, they're just trying to protect the artist, and I get that, and they are easy to work with. Trying to ferret out the legitimate from the illegitimate is interesting, because like you will get people I think you had this incident where somebody contacted you and they were just fishing, and they were not a legitimate a copyright a company protecting the copyright of the individual. Right. But the folks that we dealt with recently were, and all I had to do is provide the license, and it's Hawk is the name of the company. They're based out of Burbank, and although it took a few emails, and you have to understand that they're like different judges, whatever judge you happen to go before. One says, here's a copyright strike, general copyright strike. We fix that. The person we fix it through has to review it, and they say, well, you can't monetize. Well, that's not what the license means. And so you have sometimes you're educating. And so after we got all that worked out, now we don't have any issues with it. Yeah. And we should never have an issue with it. And I contacted the artist who is in Russia. The musician is in Russia.
Really? And
we had a dialogue that was very interesting, and he was very thankful that I took the time to reach out to him. Yeah. So I think in most cases, you're able to work it out. Mm-hmm. But if I feel hinky about it, I'll drop the music and I'll go to YouTube Studio or I'll switch it out with another artist that musician that I've not had issues with. But there are many sites where you can purchase legitimate licenses to music, and those are a couple that I use to answer your question, Cindy.
Very good question.
Because I want to make sure that I answer Cindy's questions.
Yes, exactly. And I do want to clarify something I said, which was kind of I said copyright strike. There's also a copyright claim, which is really what happened to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
A copyright strike is, especially on YouTube, is more serious in that you've done something so incredibly egregious that somebody is saying that you stole their intellectual property.
Exactly.
And there's also the copyright claim, which is what I had. I just, I have to be careful to make sure that I use the correct term. Because I kept talking about copyright strike. You get 3 copyright strikes, say on YouTube or on other other video platforms, and you're out of there. Your account is killed. Whereas a copyright claim, the people who produced the music or whatever will then claim any monetization.
That's right.
So, and you can rack those up all day long.
Yep.
But the other one, the copyright claim, is far more serious.
The one that we dealt with once on that piece of music, what they did is green lighted your site, Rising Tide, and so for that piece of music, you should never hear from them again, from that organization. And then if that artist employs another, who knows? But I always have a license. That's why I spend the money for it. That's why I charge a little bit for it. Because I want to make sure that you guys, the clients, are protected. And those licenses are, if I do a trailer, say, for you, then it's now your license. It's yours. Right, so
I appreciate that. I appreciate the extra work. I really do. And I'm hearing that buzzing again. I'm sorry, Jeff.
I don't know if it's me or let me see if I can connect or switch to the microphone. It may not make it as
when you check back in, it might be StreamYard for all I know.
Let's see here. Let me know if it disappears.
Is it coming across your headphones? Okay, that's weird because I'm hearing it. Maybe it might not be coming across for anyone else.
How about
I can't hear you.
Now.
No, your volume is real down now.
How about now?
No, up more.
No. Now.
Okay, now I'm hearing that buzzing again. Is anyone else hearing that, or is that just maybe my setup here? So anyway, we'll soldier on. What do you say?
Let me see if I'm checking through the computer itself.
And now you're faint.
How about now?
Faint with a little bit of that buzz.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How about that?
A little bit better. Let's go with this for now. Why don't we? Because we got all kinds of great comments, and I want to get you.
Absolutely. You let me know if it's better or worse as we go, and I'll try to adjust it here.
I think we can live with this.
Okay. If I sit in closer, can y'all hear me better?
Actually, that's a little bit better. Yeah.
How about like this?
Perfect.
I can do the. Okay, I'll do radio. I'll do radio like
there
this.
You go. Yeah. We'll do the Gary Owens thing, sort of.
Oh my God, you dated us.
To get that joke.
I know. I started laughing. And I go like, "Oh, he dated us." But
oh my God,
okay.
Yes. And Charles F. Millhouse says, "Bobby," and he also says, "Hello, Jeffrey," from Charles F. Millhouse. I just want to thank you for all of your tireless efforts on Evolution Man and everything else you've done for me.
Oh, thank you. He get that project got me so excited. It was so little he had to tell me about it. When he says, it's going to be kind of my take on the $6 Million Man. And it was like, you sold me. Okay. Whatever I need to do, who do I need to kill? Because I want in on this. Yeah. So I'm excited for it to come out.
Yeah, seriously. I'm looking forward to that too, because I'm an old Steve Austin fan myself. So Let's
Love
see,
it.
we've got more comments. And hello, everyone. And hey, Charles from Bobby Nash, BobbyNash.com. And Carl Witzman would have more to say, but he's designing a cover for someone.
You go, Carl.
Yeah. Yeah, Carl, if you need some help. Anyway, Cindy Kemp would like to know, do you prefer still art or motion pictures?
Still, I enjoy doing motion graphics, but more often after I've done a cover. In many cases, it weirdly, because of the work that I've done recently, the work I've done for you, I'm getting more requests to do the little promos. And so, like you enjoy broadcasting, I'm kind of getting back into that video work. But I still enjoy painting, digitally painting, and that's I still enjoy that more. I love creating a book cover. There's no greater, you call it smelling, the book when you get it. Well, I love that too. I don't lick the spines. Unlike, feel free. No, feel free. Yeah. So.
Cut out, Brian. Cut out.
No, I love holding books. I mean, that probably comes back from those days in half-price books. I love the physical, the tactile feel of holding a book and smelling a newly printed book or a newly printed comic, or I don't know. There's something about having that printed piece in front of you that I get very excited about. That goes way back. Even when I did that when I used to do a lot of watercolor and line art, just having it printed, having it right there in front of you is so much more fun.
That's great. That's great. We have a couple more questions here. Teresa Dunn would like to know what inspired you. Now you've mentioned some artists that have inspired you, in the paperback field, such as James Bama and such. What else has influenced you? And I'd like to know who your comic book influences are too.
So I think one of my are you familiar with J.C. Leyendecker?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I came across some of his work many of my inspirations come through my time in half price books, but I didn't know who he was, but I knew I liked his work.
Yeah.
And in time, I came to know who he was. So he's probably one of my early influences. Bob Peak. I love Bob Peak. I love Bruce Minnie, James Bama. And probably many guys that I love their work, and I just haven't learned their name from that era. Yeah. Then when I started, like I said, I'm a child of the 70s. So I started, I'm going to pronounce his name wrong. I'm always Buscema.
John Buscema. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. How do you say it? Pronounce it right.
I think I've always heard it pronounced Buscema, and I got that from Roy Thomas, who worked so extensively with
I just kind of roughed my way through his name.
I always called Buscema,
I started in on comic books for Captain America, early 70s. I love Captain America, Falcon. I actually liked B properties before B properties were popular. I love Captain America and Falcon. I love Iron Fist. I love Luke Cage. I love that. I kind of liked Iron Man. I didn't really care for the Avengers in that era. Right. I love Spider-Man. I love Fantastic Four. But then I discovered Charlton Comics and Space 1999 Comics. And at that time was John Byrne. And I said, oh my God, this guy is incredible. And then right after I discover him, he leaves Charlton to go to Marvel, thank God. And I love all of that work that he did, but my favorite, probably, and I will confess it, I'm old enough and man enough to confess this, but and people have talked about it. The artist that did your work in Pope Reality that you interviewed the other night, my brain is not clicking. Yes. I swear to God, I was watching him and listening to him going, no, you're telling my story. Stop telling my story. You've stolen my story. Because he and I must have been separated at birth, because a lot of his influences were my influences. But John Byrne and Terry Austin and Chris Claremont were the Holy Trinity to me. And when they did the Phoenix Saga, it was, I don't know, that was the time that my brain was totally captured. And I can sit here and remember when I read the final issue of that saga, when Jean Grey dies, and I can remember crying as a kid, and it's like today I'm more like, oh, that was so beautiful of a story. And when I tell people that story, I can't even express how beautiful that story was unless they read it.
Yeah, that was a game changer for the entire.
It was
comics, because this was Jean Grey was in X-Men #1.
Yep.
They cacked her. Of course. Yep. Marvel's revolved,
and in a beautiful way.
But
yeah.
So.
But her death was done with taste and the sacrifice. I mean, you can't. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. And even as a kid, as a I was probably 17, 16, right around there, I guess. I recognized it, and it touched me emotionally. Yeah. But his art, I suddenly gravitated to. Gil Kane, I love Gil Kane. I love the way he did hands and figures and foreshortening. He was a incredible artist in that era. I guess if you talk about contemporary, I mean, Alex Ross, all of this is all. I don't even know why I mention it sometimes, because it's like people go, yeah, that makes sense. Do you know Alex Garner? He's a digital artist. Yeah. Alex Garner is one of my.
I think it was.
Yes. And he's Batgirl and a bunch of other covers. He's kind of exclusively cover artist now, I believe. Jo Chin. She is an artist, did Buffy covers and stuff like that.
Yes, also did
beautiful.
Winona Earp.
Yes, absolutely a beautiful artist. Jason Chan, he's a book cover artist. Love him. Oh man, I guess everybody. A lot of what influences my book covers and my poster work is Drew Struzan, and he was so popular during the '80s and stuff. It's almost dangerous that he influenced me, because I find myself wanting to do something like him. And there are stories that you want to emulate him, but you got to be careful, and no one can do him. Well, that's not true. Paul Shipper, who is a fan, and Paul Shipper now is doing comic book covers and movie posters, and because there's a desire to bring that illustration back into movie posters, he's finding a life, but his style is completely inspired by Drew, and Drew is retired. And so he's just not going to do that. He does his own art now, and he doesn't need to. He's a millionaire. Yeah. But so those are kind of my major influences. But I will tell you this: I am influenced by Google. I can get on Google and run a subject and be inspired by artwork that accompanies that subject. I'm inspired by artists that I work with or know. Some of them drive me crazy because they work in a style that I could only dream of working in. Mike Mignola is I love his inking style. I love his oh my gosh, I feel terrible. McFarlane. Oh my gosh, super. That guy blew my brain. I mean, it was like, but people, I think the guys that inspire the masses have inspired me, but I don't think I will ever be able to do the work that they do. I could only hope to make it echo, but yeah.
Yeah.
Long answer to a very short question.
Well, we are the sum total of our influences and people, that we,
Absolutely.
taken to emulate, like John Byrne. I see him as a great clone of like Jack Kirby, John Buscema, and Gil Kane. He's kind of like this wonderful synthesis of all of them. So
Absolutely. And I guess sometimes artists, depending on the media, inkers, there's guys that I love that I don't necessarily gravitate to the artist, but if that inker is thrown in there, you go like, oh my gosh, he or she has made this beautiful.
right.
And it's not the artist, it's the inker that's making it look beautiful. It took me a while to get there.
Yeah, I always admired certain inkers like Joe Sinnott, George Klein, Frank
Absolutely.
Giacoia, and all. But somebody once said in an interview, it's really the inker whose work you see. Because penciler, they draw over the penciler's line. Tom Palmer is one of my favorite inkers ever. And what he did was like transform people like Neil Adams on X-Men or John Buscema and everybody.
Neil Adams. Oh, that's another.
Yeah.
Neil Adams Batman was that's when I learned to love Batman. I love the TV show. Sure. That's because I was a kid. But Neil Adams Batman. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
That's a dream. Anyway, sorry.
He was the pinnacle. He really was. And Michaela Jade would like to know, she has a friend who writes historical westerns. I almost said weapons. They use weapons in westerns, by the way, kids. Come to me for more fun facts. Anyway, Michaela Jade has a friend who writes historical westerns. Have you done anything like that, or could you?
So, yes, to a certain degree. When I worked for Colonial Radio Theater, they would do a lot of historical dramas where, for example, the Battle of Gettysburg, the Alamo, Little Bighorn, things like that. Those are the opportunities that I had to do some historical work. Of course, it's still a dramatization of those events, but I have some, when would I have imagined that I was going to get to do Abraham Lincoln and a Union soldier and a rebel and in art? And that's something that Colonial Radio afforded me, and the classics. I got to work on Treasure Island and things like that I never imagined I'd get to work on for them. So I do some work historical. I don't get charged up by it like I do fiction. But I've done it, and I can do it depending on what it is. Westerns, love Western stuff.
I'd love to write one, a serious one, like a real Western. I've done a superhero Western, but I'd really love to do a straight Western one of these days. I know a lot of writers would.
I think the first comic book I ever owned was a Lone Ranger. I was telling, I think John Bruning this the other day. When I was a kid and they go to the to the barber, he was right next door to a drugstore. Oh God, I'm sounding like, and let me tell you, we paid a nickel for it. Yeah. And anyway, we'd go get a soda pop. Yeah. But I would go and sit down in the chair, and the guy had a stack of comic books that he got from this drugstore next door. And he said, if you sit still, you can take a comic book home. And all he would get they weren't superhero stuff. It was Gold Key and it would be Lone Ranger or Western stories or war stories and things like that. And I would just like try to leave with the Lone Ranger every time I could. And I wish I had him today. Oh, yeah. There's a tragic story of why I don't, but we'll leave that for another time. Oh man.
Yes, and I'm going to get even with my father if it's the last thing I do.
That's exactly what. Let's plan this together.
Yeah, no kidding. I studied forensics. We got a good chance of defeating the CSI.
Oh man, I think we can do it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of doing it, Bobby Nash says you can do it. It says Jeffrey does fantastic work, amazing covers. I have to agree. Beautiful work.
Thank you, Bobby.
Now, here's probably one of the most important questions of the night from Rick Bradley. Glad to see you here, superstar. What
Hey,
was
Rick.
your favorite D&D character you ran, and your favorite adventure that you have run?
So, wow, that's a big question. So let me go backwards. The favorite
2 hours later.
adventure, yeah, the months later,
Yeah.
we ran a campaign that lasted approximately a year, and it was. I mean, it was about as epic as I could try to make it. We had the entire tabletop, big dining room table at a friend's house, whose parents always put up with us playing, was covered with a map, and they literally explored every piece of this map that led to this. I would call it like Lord of the Rings kind of epic battle at the end. I don't really have a name for the adventure, but man. I remember the night that it ended because we stayed up all night, and then we went and got some sleep, 4 hours, came back and played almost 20 hours straight to end that adventure. Favorite character? I have always played clerics. I don't know why, but I've always played clerics. What was the guy's name?
Member of the team, because they do the healing.
Yes, and you got to clobber people from time to time, but I've always so I think when the first one I had died, I think I just jumped right back into a cleric. But honestly, like I said earlier, I probably played so few games and ran so many more. But yeah, clerics.
That works.
Yeah.
Teresa Dunn has a question here. What inspires you to do what you did for Brian? Those amazing trailers that are selling so many copies of my books, and you all need to buy them. Brian came risingtide.pub. Anyway, go ahead.
So this will make Brian uncomfortable. So I get to do that. We talked a little bit about this before the show. So I came to know Brian through Charles Millhouse, who connected us up for a possible cover project. I was aware of the programs being produced, but I hadn't sat and watched any. Of course, when the first thing I hear is, "Hey, you need to hook up with this guy. He's got a possible project for you." I said, "Sure, I got to get to know him." So the best way to get to know Brian is to watch his shows. And so I started watching. What I stumbled into was a guy who makes people feel positive about what they're doing, excited about what they're doing. I said this the other day on your show. I love working while the show's going on over here on one of my wife calls it the control, command and control. I have 4 screens here, and this one is the one here on the right is dedicated to music or clever title pending or never mind the furthermore. And then when that's going on here, I am listening to everything. That's why I usually check in and then I just listen. Because, Brian, what you do for us is you get us charged up again. You give us inspiration, or even if I just am doing a job to get it done, I rethink that. I'll change my mind about it. So after listening to Nevermind the Furthermore episodes and suddenly being introduced to this tribe of people, of positive people who were doing the same thing and I'm going to use an 80s term, that synergy, but I started feeling better. Then when I knew I was hooked and on you and your shows is when I would say, okay, what day is it? Okay, it's Sunday. Okay, so it's Sunday. Tomorrow morning is Nevermind the Furthermore. I started gauging my week by it because I found that I loved listening to people talking. I loved meeting people without actually meeting them. And that was very weird. But and I know this was so weird because you told me you introduced me to that term, which was when I said, "Hey, I contacted you and I said, "Hey, I'd like to do this. I could do this for you. I could do this for you." You suddenly went and it got quiet, and I was like, in our conversation, I was like, "Oh, I've scared him off," because, and then, when you started talking about the imposter syndrome, and you explained to me, you said, well, when people want to do things like that without remuneration or just because, it sets off the alarm bells for my imposter syndrome. Yeah. And I didn't know what that was until you explained it. And then I went, holy crap, I've been suffering from imposter syndrome for the past, 8 years, 10 years, and I didn't know what it was called. Yeah. So once we started navigating through that, my desire to do something nice for the guy that is doing nice things for other people is what drove me to do the first trailer. And then when got you excited, that drove the next one. And then I thought, you know what? This is my way to pay him back. And he doesn't even have to ask, because you never said, hey, would you do that? Would you do that? I just was
saving up my favors.
Yeah. And then we started talking more, and then bartering, and working things out. So to answer Teresa's question, it was to give you something back, because I don't know any other way to do that. We can tell you thank you. We can tell you how important your shows are to us, and we can tell you all that and give you lip service. Christian, shut up. But the honest truth is that was my way to give you something back. And now that you're full and I'm full, I'm not doing it anymore. No.
We don't need each other.
No, not anymore.
By the way, watch your mailbox in a couple days, Jeff.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. I know it probably freaks you out when I send stuff to you like that, but again,
it's like Christmas,
Good, because that's honestly, I cannot overemphasize, and I'm not being patronizing. I am trying to be.
I appreciate it.
You have done, and I can guarantee you, if you went and talked to all of the Nevermorians or Clevermorians, that you would hear the same thing, Brian. I know it's difficult for you to hear, and we talked about this a while ago.
We'll be dealing with it from tonight.
So I can't wait for that, because I didn't even know what that was, and now that you've explained it, I'm still terrified of it. Heck, I did when I was an assistant chief. I was waiting for somebody to come knock on the door and say, hey, get out of that guy's chair. You're not supposed to be in the assistant chief's chair. Get out of there. The same thing with my artwork. I'm waiting for the person to tap me on the shoulder and say, no, book cover artist. No. Yeah. Stop doing that. You need to go do something else. But I didn't know what it was until you explained it. And I love it. I'm so interested in it now. It's pathetic. I can't wait for that show. I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing it next week. And by the way, while we have it, we will be having not just myself, thank goodness. We'll have Carl Witzman, John C. Bruning, and Amy Hale will be on hand to discuss that. So I'm looking forward to it, because it's a term that I have only known about for really a couple of years, but have known that feeling for so very long.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've seen how it, I can't really say it stops me, but it slows me down incredibly. And it's something I just have to bull past, but we'll be exploring it next week, and we look forward to a live next week.
Carl, I'm going to give Carl credit, but Carl, I was watching the show where he said this. Yes. It was the morning, the moment he said, and I can only paraphrase it, but you have to be successful before you can ever get that feeling. Yeah. Whatever he wrote that morning, I remember I'm looking over here to my side, because I remember reading it on the screen, and I stopped for a second and went, holy crap, that is so insightful.
It's profound.
And it is profound. And I was like, and so when I get that feeling,
Yeah.
even tonight before I came on the show, I'm going, somebody's going to, in the middle, I'm going to be drug off camera, and somebody's going to lean in and go, okay, we took care of him. He was posing as an artist, and then you would go, oh, okay. Well, I will talk here fill up the next hour and a half, But I remember what Carl says, and I go, man, I hope that's true to a certain degree. Then you start thinking, well, what an arrogant bastard he is for thinking he's been successful,
Yeah. Then you run into another wall that you have to work.
That's right. It's a vicious cycle. It really is.
It really is. But that saying that Carl gave really helped me a lot. And I still have it. But I don't have it to the degree I did before I read that too. So, yeah. Thank you, Carl Whitson.
That's tough. Yes, Carl. Absolutely.
Yeah. And while we're talking about feeding each other's imposter syndrome, John B. Pike of the back of the Cereal Box channel. I know HR is going into overtime tonight. Jeff Hayes is the best cover artist I've ever seen. He did my Tales from the Flip Side cover from Prose Press, if I remember.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you, John. I appreciate that. You're an extremely talented person too. So yeah, you're right. That immediately made me feel, John B. Pike is saying that about me. He's going to figure me out.
Oh, look out. Here comes the big
Thank you, John. Thank you. That's right.
Cindy Gibb said, I lived in or near Austin for a long time, from Lago Vista to Hutto and to Kyle.
Wow. I have a lot of friends in every one of those places. Doesn't look anywhere near the same. You'd be shocked. Be shocked.
It sounds like my old hometown, Georgetown, Illinois. I explained to people that everything there now used to be something else.
Absolutely. This place has exploded out here. Absolutely.
Wow. That's amazing. That is so
But cool. I still love Austin, and I still love being on the periphery of it. The cities that she mentioned, I've worked with folks from those cities many, many times. Lago Vista, matter of fact, one of my oldest friends is chief of police out there. Been there for a long, long time.
Okay, cool. That's excellent. Now Grant Lankard has a
morning, Mr. Grant.
Yes, and it's not political. I don't think we need to go into politics here. I wonder what he means about being a progressive police officer if I'll butt up against Brian's anti-politics law. No, I don't see that as a good question, actually, Grant. I think it's one worth asking.
So it has been asked of me because I kind of use that term, and it's probably not even the appropriate term. So let me go back. I was brought up in the era what would have been known as a blue dog Democrat. The household I grew up in was blue dog Democrat. So I count myself very lucky. We were kind of an atypical family. Remember, Austin, I grew up in Austin, and Austin is not a typical Texas city. It's like Texas and Austin. It's like two different countries. But because I grew up on Star Trek, because I grew up with the ideals, because I found myself thinking very differently, and because the 7 friends that I talked about earlier from high school were all very reasonable, good people. They taught me how to be a reasonable and good person in spite of some of the things that I grew up around. My grandparents raised me, and I'm glad they did. Because I learned how to be more open-minded, more accepting. I found a lot of the reasons that I found people interesting from the spectrum of people in the world is because my grandfather used to take me with him as he would go walk around the small little town he lived in and introduce me to people. So I started, meeting a very diverse group of people. And so I found something interesting in them. Well, that carried through. So now to answer your question, when I started in law enforcement, started in the 80s. And law, depending on the city you were around, the older the city sometimes had some ingrained behavior and institutionalized behavior that I did not find attractive. And I'm trying not to use buzzwords. I want to speak plainly so I can answer the question plainly, but some institutionalized behavior toward anyone, let alone people of color. My mother worked in human resources for her 30-year career. And I was taught, and it was expected of me to be colorblind and open-minded and open-eared. So when I became a police officer, that's how I wanted to conduct myself. I used to get so mad at I could tell so many stories of things that I saw, misconduct, poor behavior, things that I was too immature or I didn't even know how to process as a young officer. But as I promoted and as I was able to influence, I began to try to make others see law enforcement from the perspective that I thought I had or believe I have. I started teaching ethics. I started working with Diop Kameu, who is out of Florida, and he is a former police officer, African-American police officer, who I've learned so much from. And honestly, I hope that I've imparted to other officers that I've worked with. But so the word progressive, that's attached to a lot of different things. So I'll give it my meaning is I was a very atypical person. It kind of made me a little bit on the outside in many cases. Police work was not the beginning, middle, and end of my life, and where you can get absorbed in cultures, sports. It doesn't have to be police work, but it can be sport. Doctors can get so absorbed in what they do that they lose sight of what they're doing it for, why they're doing it. I believe, again, I go back to I was taught that, not all police officers are good. That's true. There are many, many great, good, well-intended people. But all of the things that we're experiencing today are the result of behavior of officers. It didn't come out of the blue. African Americans, why Black Lives Matter is because they have not mattered. You can go, I could talk 2 more hours on this, actually 4, because that's usually how I start my ethics class. So I've tried to, when I worked at the hospital police, it was predominantly African American. So I was lucky to work around and try to be what I thought the best police officer could be. Then when I moved up, I tried to teach people what I thought and what I felt. They used to call it haze washing instead of brainwashing. I have many friends that say, "Oh, he haze washed me," But so I'm very proud of my career. I am very proud. I can sit here and say definitively that I did not conduct any business in 30 years that would have caused me a second thought. I've made mistakes. Don't get me wrong. Don't let that be an illusion. That's the point. You're going to make mistakes, but willful misconduct, how I treat other people. I've been taught to treat people with respect. That's how I try to conduct myself. And honestly, in the era that I was a police officer, some of that would be considered progressive, different, atypical. I'm proud of that. I'm happy to have been able to have a career like that. I hope that answered your question, because it's a long answer. A lot of observational proof behind it.
No, it's a great answer. It really was. And thank you for asking that, Grant. Bobby Nash says your story could be its own book, Jeffrey. Amazing career
Oh,
trajectory.
don't do that, Bobby.
Maybe we'll
Don't
write
do
it in
that.
a snow book or something this year.
There you
Anyway,
go. Yeah, I got a lot of stories he can use, but
there you go. And Sarah says, Jeff, impressed with your work in law enforcement. And yeah, definitely thank you for your service in
thank you.
that field. Did any of it inspire your artwork? Now, we did answer the question earlier about whether you did artwork on the side, but did your experience as a police officer in any way influence what you're doing now artistically? That's an excellent question, Sarah. Thank you.
No, absolutely, absolutely. So I did a lot of artwork for law enforcement. I did a lot of design work. I've designed departments, badges, patches, recruiting posters, things like that. But now let's flip it around and say how they inspire. So it's interesting when you do pulp covers. There's a lot of weaponry involved, and I would not be able to reproduce a lot of those scenes and characters and poses without having a rudimentary knowledge of weaponry. And so that is a big influence. Many people, I work with models, not all the time, but most of the time. Many of the models that you see on my covers are friends that are police officers or firefighters or actors, local actors. But yeah, I've had a lot of covers, especially for Prose Press, where that had that law enforcement superhero and detective kind of mesh, and so I was able to use a lot of information, props, and other things from law enforcement. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Cindy Kemp says, I'm often in awe of the cover artists come up with based on my description and sometimes really rough sketches. And Carl Witzman has a question for you. How did you get into doing the ads?
So I always have, I don't know, I love promo. So I grew up with TV Guide. I don't know, you know, probably some of us were like, what's that? But
They still do it. I think they actually still have TV
yeah,
Guide.
I think they do,
it's
but it's like that thin or something.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's a placemat now.
So I used to love those, and I love the advertisements. I used to have the old photo books that had the peel off. You peel back the paper. Yeah, people are going like, yeah, was that in the 40s? No, I used to buy those photo books, those 1 foot square photo books, and I would cut out covers and ads and things in TV Guide or other magazines. That's how I became a Bob Peak fan before I even knew who Bob Peak was. I loved his art and then found out who he was. But I always have enjoyed doing that. And then when I kind of, I did it for the Star Trek folks that did the fan productions. I did it for my church. And I did it. I helped starter churches by doing promotional work for their church to get them going and get them started. So I did that in my spare time long enough that it's just something I enjoy. I still like it. I enjoy taking the books, the covers that I do, and I enjoy producing little social media ads and things like that for them. So video was the transition. I've always been interested in video or film and then video, but digital video. I did that for my church for many, many years, and now it's translated over into this part of it.
That is great. That is great. Bobby Nash says Jeffrey has drawn the definitive snow on the covers. I love them. He really does. He just, in fact, when I mentioned that I knew you, and I mentioned this to Bobby and Jim Beard on the show a few weeks ago, before the show. They're like, oh, you know Jeff too. He's awesome. He's great. So it's kind of like this. Your ears should have been like bursting in flames.
Doing the snow covers are easy, and it's because I love the characters. And Bobby and I he's probably younger than I am, but we come from that era, and we like the same kind of TV. And, so he writes those like episodes that I see in my head, which makes doing the covers so much easier. And doing the posters and kind of meshing all that together is so much fun.
That's great. That's great. Rick Bradley has a question. Again, what's your favorite type of genre to draw a cover for? And then what is your least favorite that you have done?
Okay, so I guess I used to enjoy science fiction. I would have answered science fiction, but because of Prose Press and recent projects, I would say I'm kind of enjoying horror, which is kind of weird because I would never imagine that. But I enjoy trying to create an image that in itself is frightening. So I enjoy horror right now, but I will fluctuate because I went through a period of time where I loved doing Westerns. And it was a good time too, because I got a contract to do 20 something Western book covers, and I had to have liked it or I couldn't have done. Of course, these were kind of risque covers too. They're the Gunsmith covers. If anybody wants to look that up, there are a girl or two or three on every cover. So yeah, but the least, gosh, I guess I would never probably seek out or romance cover or anything like that. I've done a couple. I mean, all those Westerns are semi-romance, but I guess romance in general, because there's an imagery, a kind of a set imagery with your classic romance cover that I wouldn't necessarily gravitate to. I will not mention the cover that I hated doing the most, because I think the author really liked it. So but if you don't, I will tell you this: if you're an illustrator, it'll be hard to be an illustrator for any length of time if you can't find something interesting in the project you're working on. I've just been lucky being exposed to new pulp and many of the authors and publishers that have given me opportunities to do their covers are all subjects that I enjoy.
Very cool. Very cool. Rick Bradley says that shadow print looks thrilling amazing.
Thank you. It's one of my favorites.
Cool. And it is beautiful. It is beautiful. Bobby Nash says snow shorts are coming in 2021. Both Brian and Jeffrey are involved. And www.abrahamsnow.com will have an official announcement this month. So please.
Next year is going to be crazy.
Next year is going to be fun. Great. I'm so jazzed about working with Bobby on this. And I'll be working with Jim Beard on a project or two with John C. Brewing as well. So
that's good.
Yeah, I'm very pleased with that. And Rick Bradley has another question.
Sure.
What do you consider the greatest comic strip, and why is it Calvin and Hobbes? I believe that's
How
what
do
we
you
call
know that? So he's right. Calvin and Hobbes is my favorite comic strip. Next, running a close second would be Peanuts, because I grew up on it, and I probably bought every Peanuts paperback book compilation when I was a kid. I loved them. I used to trace them. I used to could draw Snoopy hands down. But Calvin and Hobbes is awesome. I mean, how could you? It's a kid using his imagination. I was an only child, and so my Hobbes happens to be named G.I. Joe. I created so many adventures on my own as a kid. That's why I gravitate toward Calvin and Hobbes, because that's what he's doing. And his observations are right on, spot on. and a little sarcastic, which we talked about earlier before the show. So you wonder why I kind of like Calvin and Hobbes. But yes, he's right.
Yes, definitely. And Gospel Illusionist Jake Lindsay asks, would you do an ad for a theatrical movie if you could?
I have done those. I've done I would call them more indie films. However, the ones I did in the UK were theatrical films released in the UK, obviously. Yeah, of course I would love to. I don't think I'll have the opportunity to today, especially. Those are so controlled by corporately controlled. I don't think I'll ever get the opportunity to do anything like that. But so that's another reason I love indie films and indie authors and stuff, because that's my opportunity to do things that I otherwise wouldn't get a chance to do.
That's great. Great answer. And also it's segues into Sarah's next question, which is how many countries have you done work for? Where has your work appeared around the world?
So really only the US and the UK. I have a lot of friends in the UK. I have some friends in both England and Scotland that I do work for, some fan productions, some tribute productions, and then obviously for Simon Phillips, I did that series of film posters, and we did a lot of viral work. So the UK and the US mostly. However, a friend of a friend sent me a photograph. He was in Hong Kong and was looking through some, we call them Hong Kong bootleg, videos. And he came across Lord of the Rings. And the wonderful thing about it was it said Lord of the Rings, and it had my artwork for the tribute film Born of Hope from 2009 as the Lord of the Rings cover. And he took that photo and sent that to me. So although illegitimate, I did the Lord of the Rings poster work in China, in Hong Kong. But yeah, that was fun. I told him, why didn't you buy it for me? I would have paid him back, but no, he just took a picture.
That's great. That's great. Bobby Nash says, taking on too much. I know this all too well. Yeah, I think we can form a 12-step clinic here between the three of us, I suspect.
I about killed myself when I worked for Prose, and it's not their fault. It was all mine. I got a pick of a lot of covers. And because of that, it was like, gimme. And I did myself a disservice, and I did Prose a disservice. And I basically, I did over, I think 127 covers for Prose alone. And that's not counting other freelance work or anything like that. But
that's a lot.
Yeah, I'm glad I had to turn off. It was like I had to click off, reset, and then come back into it. And now I have a much more mature approach.
Yeah. Well, I think that part of that is from, we remember the lean times when nobody cared that we had all this free time and all this talent. And so it's like, like you said, it's like being, the kid in the candy store, or like going down the assignment buffet. You just start piling it up on your plate.
Absolutely.
You reach a point where it's impossible to get.
You want an anthology. Here's an anthology. Here's an anthology. Oh, here's a project. Here's a magazine article. Here, same thing for me. It was, they would say, can you do? And before he said the project, it would be yes. The word yes would come out of my mouth. Yeah. It was dumb, and I hope I don't do that again, because I'm having too much fun, especially getting projects done relatively on time.
I know the feeling. Don't ask me about Aquatic, though. Anyway, Cindy Kemp yells, Doc Saga, woot, because she's in that book, and so is Charles Millhouse. Doc Saga, yeah. And we have a question here. We're going to go back. And by the way, folks, thank you for your incredible questions. I promise we are going to write down everyone who had a question for Jeffrey Hayes, even if we don't get to it on the air. But hopefully
that's right.
cajole Jeffrey into coming back, and you can ask them again, and I'll just talk fast.
And for the drawing, I'll take, if it was asked or not, as long as you asked a legitimate question, I will take that name down. And my goal is to do the drawing tomorrow morning and then announce the winner on Never Mind the Furthermore, hopefully at the beginning of the show. So that's the goal.
Good. Tune in tomorrow, 10 a.m.
Yes.
Eastern, 9 a.m. Central. Now, Yankee Southerner, please subscribe to his new YouTube channel. Now, he's not heard of you. I don't know where he's been hiding, but and you've told us some of the covers, but and you've told us that you work extensively for Bobby Nash and for Prose Press. Who else have you done work for?
So let's see, Charles Millhouse. We just released did a cover reveal for the book that will come out in February, Evolution Man. Jim Beard. You're going to make me open my file and look over here.
Get the highlights.
When I did those, when I was working for Prose, there's a number of authors that I got to work for, but I wasn't working for the author. I was working for the publisher. But through Facebook and things like that, good gosh. Had he heard me earlier, I'm terrible with names. I could bust open my computer program and read off a whole bunch of names, but I've got to work with a lot of folks in the new pulp genre. Those that are still publishing under for Prose and Airship. Yeah. So many folks. Let me think. Hang on. Jim Beard, Bobby Nash, tons of work for Tommy Hancock, Nikki Nelson Hicks, Nancy Hansen, Paul Bishop. He's out of California, ex-police officer, writes tremendously excellent police procedurals and mysteries. Glenn Smith, PJ Lozito, Barry Reese, only recently. James Palmer, a guy named Brian K. Morris at some point. Those are the guys that I've recently worked with over the past couple of years, but just a long list of folks that I got to work with when I was working with Prose Press.
That's great. That's great. Now we're going to close. We've gone over 2 hours, and Jeffrey, thank you for your perseverance.
Have we? Oh my gosh!
I know, doesn't it fly?
I love it. Okay, I was terrified that I would look up and we'd still have an hour left, but I didn't even know we hit the 2 hour mark yet. Oh wow!
Goodness, yes, and we are well over.
Sorry,
an hour
guys.
In the comments, which
means
I'm
so sorry.
I apologize, but like I said, we will write down who has asked a legit question, and then
absolutely
we'll go into the pot, and Jeffrey will choose the winner by tomorrow morning.
It did not have to be asked on air. If you asked a question, it will be entered.
Yes,
I'll make sure of it.
You got a couple minutes to come up with something if you haven't already. Now, Ryan Permisson, I've got to find out how you say your last name. I keep butchering. I'm sure, Ryan. Thank you for being here, brother. But anyway, this is an excellent question. I know I've skipped a couple, but we want to get somebody new in the mix here. How important is it for the story to match the cover of the book, or vice versa, I guess? Does the story sell or the cover sell more? I've got my answer, but I want to hear what Jeffrey Hayes has.
So it doesn't always have to reflect the story. Sometimes it can be what I call a drama cover, which is just features the maybe the protagonist or the villain, and that, if you make it interesting enough, can draw a person in. That's what the goal is of the cover. It's not, you're not telling the story. You are supposed to try to tell a little bit of the story, but I think the job of a cover artist, a cover illustrator, is to draw you in. Hopefully, in the old days, it would make you pick up the book, open it up, read a little bit, and then you've done your job. I don't think it always, because I've done many covers that actually only lightly touch on the story inside. Some of my favorite covers just lightly touch on the story inside. Sometimes I've made up scenes that don't even occur in the book. They could occur in the book, but they're some of the best covers I've done. It's a little bit of both, but I think that our job as illustrators is to get somebody to pick it up or click today. It would be on Amazon. They see it. They go like, "Ooh, that looks interesting. That's a genre I enjoy. Ooh, that has a monster on it. That blah, blah, blah." To read more. That's our job. And if we can make that happen, then we've done our job.
Very, very good. And Bobby Nash is taking responsibility for your sound kerfluffle earlier. You said my name and zap goes the sound. Well, Bobby?
I have no idea. Is it better now, or are you still hearing
Oh, yeah,
that?
it's fantastic now.
Good.
Yeah, and
Okay, wow.
okay. And it wasn't just me or the voices in my head. So, and let's see if there's anything else. But anyway, I think it's a great question to close the show out on, don't you?
Sure. Man, I
Otherwise,
can't
you'll
even
be here
believe.
for another 2 hours.
And you know what? I would never, I wouldn't even have imagined when you said we've gone over 2 hours. My clock is about that big. And I looked up and I went, oh man, it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like it. And I know my answers are long because I do love to talk.
They're in depth. I'm going to have a show with you and Bobby Nash and Jim Beard.
Oh,
And
see, I won't talk much because all I'll do is laugh. Because when you had Jim and Bobby on last time, my wife thought I was crazy because I was sitting there laughing and laughing. So I don't know. I probably wouldn't talk as much.
Oh, I'm going to go out for a pizza if I get you guys in the room. You know, it's like you won't need me at all. So anyway, thank you all for your comments, and I'm sorry we didn't even get to putting all of them on the screen.
I feel terrible.
You
know,
guys,
like other folks have said, I have a Facebook page, and if you want to, I'll do my best to answer the questions that I see that we didn't cover in the show. I'll try to do my best, or feel free to shoot me a message or post it on my Facebook. Under this, there's a little ad for this. If you want to put a question up there, I'm happy to answer it.
Excellent. And Sarah has a comment here. I gauge my days by Brian's shows too.
So do I.
Thank you, darling. Love you. And
So
says, I love the package you sent for Brian. Yes, we had a package reveal with the cool stuff you sent me. In fact, I'm looking at it way over in the corner there of my filthy office. How do we get the book of art you sent in said package?
So if you message me, we can work something out. That's a little quick comic book size portfolio, and I'm happy to send that to anybody who's interested. Whoever wins the shadow print will also get a whole bunch of swag in the box as well, so it doesn't come. Yeah, that's right. You can. My Facebook is the easiest way to get in touch with me. You can also go to and we'll talk about that in a second as we close. But you can contact me through the webpage or Facebook, and I can get you a copy of it.
All right. Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Sarah. And thank you all again. Thank you, Clayton Merwin. Saw you sneak in here.
Hey, Clayton.
Yeah. Clayton just snuck in under the wire. And we got you registered here, Clayton. Thank you to everyone. We've got about 15 people that asked great questions tonight. And thank you all for your participation. I apologize for not getting to everyone. But
my long answers.
Yeah, no, great answers. I love the in-depth stuff. I really do. If we had asked one question and you'd taken up the whole hour, 2 hours and 19 minutes, I'd have been a happy boy. But anyway, I know everyone has enjoyed it. We're getting some compliments here. Clayton, we got you here. Glad to see you, brother. And, a whole bunch of people liking what we do. And Bobby Nash is taking off. And hello, Clayton. How you doing?
Man.
Yes, so horror. And what, over 2 hours? I know, time flies. And time flew, says Trevor Hawkins, and the city kept goes, if the plural of tooth is teeth, then why isn't the plural of booth beef? That's true.
Oh, she's such a wielder of pun.
She is, isn't she great? And said, thanks for playing. Thank you, Cindy. Appreciate it. And have him back, Brian. Well, if he'll allow us to have him back, it could happen.
Of course.
Cool. Excellent. Well, we appreciate you, Jeffrey. Thank you so much for sharing your talent and your time and your incredible answers with us all. And I could go on for another 2 hours with you. I really could.
That was fun. Very, very, very fun.
Well, I enjoyed it too. So we're going to put you in the spotlight dance once again. You get the floor, and please tell everyone how to stay in touch with you.
Sure. The easiest way to get in contact with me or to follow what I'm doing, I have the webpage, which is plasmafiregraphics.com. That is, it's got a contact page there. You can get in contact me through the website, or you can go to facebook.com Plasmafire Graphics, and I'm there every day, probably most of the day. It's up on one of my screens. So feel free to message me or contact me through Facebook if you need it. I'm on Instagram as well, under Plasmafire Graphics. Very often, but not as often as Facebook. So don't hesitate to contact me either way.
All right, excellent. Jeffrey Hayes, thank you so much for being on Clever Title Pending tonight.
No, thank you.
Appreciate it, and we'll get you back on as soon as possible. And now I'm going to drop you out of the picture, and please stick around so I can say goodnight.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I agree. Thank you, everyone, for wait. What? You already had your spot. It's my turn.
I have another 2 hours. No.
Okay. See you guys. Bye.
Okay, so it began.
Oh, we'll save it for the next.
You'll start to do tomorrow's. Never mind the furthermore, and I'll be going. And
now for the second question you asked.
Yeah, I was 4 years old when I first. No,
I started in a 5,000 watt radio station.
That's right.
My old Ted Baxter there. But anyway, thank you, Jeffrey Hayes. We'll talk in a minute here, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone. And Carl Witzman, thank you so much. Appreciate the compliment. Sarah, thank you so much. And great answers, never got bored from Sarah. Well, thank you for your great questions, hon. And Daniel Burris, glad to see you here. Awesome show, very informative. Thank you. Glad you were here. And good night, Jeffrey, and good night, Irene. Thank you, Clayton Merwin. Again, thank you to everyone who showed up tonight with your great questions, and we will definitely have this wonderful man back in the immediate future. And now, and I have written down everyone who wrote a legit question for our guest, Jeffrey Hayes of Plasmafire Graphics. And thank you to Plasmafire Graphics for being the sponsor of this episode. Plasmafiregraphics.com, when the look of your book matters to you. And Sarah, love you too. Mwah. Love it. I really do. And anyway, thank you to all of our listeners on iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and Spotify, and other podcast platforms. Thank you to Rising Tide Publications and geekinsider.com for powering this show. Also, thank you to everyone who signs up for the free monthly newsletter we do. You can sign up at risingtide.pub and be informed of all the stuff that I'm up to, as well as Rising Tide Publications. We do a unique video every month, plus we have special secret links, occasional book offers, and other folderol that keeps you informed on everything we're doing. Thank you to our Patreon subscribers. We have a new card coming up soon that we will be putting up, glorifying your names. And anyway, with the newsletter, please sign up. The next issue will go out January 1st, starting off your 2021 right. Please sign up because we give motivation, inspiration, and education in every issue. If you're watching us on Facebook today, please, if you have enjoyed any part of the show, please give us a like or a love, some sort of reaction, because it improves our algorithm standings. Okay, it makes us easier to see in the algorithms. We'll show up on more news feeds that way, and so will your questions. Also, please like the page you saw it on, which will be Rising Tide Publications. We couldn't get on Indie Event this week because they're retooling it, but anyway, Rising Tide Publications, please sign up for that page. Give it a like as well. Also, if you're watching us on YouTube, thank you so much. Please, again, if you enjoyed it, just take a second and like the video, give it a thumbs up, and also please subscribe to the channel. Again, it helps our visibility and our searchability and our ability to reach more people with your message. Plus, tickle that bell so that you'll get notified of all future broadcasts as we schedule them. And also tune in tomorrow. We will have the winner of the contest for that great shadow print by Jeffrey Hayes, and we'll announce that as soon as we can on the show. Maybe we can get Jeffrey to pop in here and even say the name of the person. Who knows? We'll talk about that after the show. But anyway, thank you all, and good Good night, Clay and Merwin. And good night, Jeffrey. And good night, everyone. Appreciate your being here. And thank you to everyone who showed up tonight. Their great comments and questions. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you got a lot from it. And don't forget, this coming Tuesday on next episode of Clever Title Pending. Next 2 episodes are going to be pretty awesome. Next week, we are going to, as we talked about earlier, we're going to be diving into the subject of imposter syndrome. Once again, if you suffer from it, I think you're going to find some company. You may even get some relief. Who knows? Anyway, we will also be joined by Carl Witzman, John C. Bruning, and Amy Hale for that episode. That's going to be a lot of fun. Also on that day, I will be on TED Talks Live at 11 a.m. that morning. And then we're going to close out the year on the 29th with a special panel. We're going to look back at 2020, how we got through it as creative people, and how we're positioning ourselves for success in 2021. I think that's going to be a really important episode. We really love it if you showed up. Bring your questions. As always, we're going to have Donna Carlene, the one, the only Donna Carlene, and Kathy Jackson, Michaela Jade, and Luke Stone. All right. So anyway, thank you very much, one and all, for your attention this evening. We hope you enjoyed the show. We hope you got a lot from it. And we will be running a couple of Plasmafire Graphics graphics for you, so you'll know what we're talking about. And thank you all again for being here. Thank you for being part of the conversation. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 10 a.m., 9 a.m. Central on Never Mind the Furthermore. And as always, folks, stay smart, stay safe, wash your hands, and never apologize for being awesome. Thank you for being awesome tonight here on Clever Title Pending. We'll see you tomorrow morning on Never Mind the Furthermore. Have a great evening.
Stormgate Press presents a collection of 7 new short stories from today's leading authors and illustrators in the new pulp genre. Experience courageous two-fisted heroes. Choose high-flying action. Choose depth.
Thank you for tuning in to Clever Title Pending, a Rising Tide Publications and Brian K. Morris production. A member of Comic Book Advocating Network and sponsored by GeekInsider.com. Become part of our show with sponsorship and advertising opportunities. For details, contact advertising at geekinsider.com or visit podcast.geekinsider.com. The Geek Insider podcast is available on your favorite app, so please hit the follow button and share it out to your friends, because if you don't, you might have to turn in your geek card.